Girls, guns, and a quest to find certain objects so you can find out what you're really meant for in life. My question to you, Zack Snyder, is how many times have you watched Pan's Labyrinth?
Christina is dead.
Try and stop me.
Sean!
Get back!
Source code.
You can only really link Sucker Punch and Pan's Labyrinth through their story, not their quality. Not to say that Sucker Punch doesn't have some good qualities. I like the idea of the old and the new soundtrack mixing in with an apparent dynamic action scene. The action scenes in Sucker Punch are never particularly exciting, but it makes them watchable. More watchable than Battle Los Angeles, or the direct comparison to this film. The one it reminds me of the most is Max Payne. And as if you couldn't tell, I like the soundtrack in Sucker Punch. Don't even mind the idea of Sucker Punch. Making it completely geeky is fine by me. Making it entertaining is the problem. It's kind of strange to think that this completely nerdy film comes out at the time of a completely other nerdy film last year. Kick-Ass. Kick-Ass was funny, it was oddly charming, it had a visual flair to it, it had a dynamic verge on action scenes. This, on the other hand, is closer to Legion than anything else. And with the comparison to Kick-Ass, with you kind of hoping that it has a sense of wit, not charm, but humour to it. That's what you kind of hope with Sucker Punch. The reason for that is because it plays itself so stubbornly serious. This is a film that plays it completely 100% straight. You could think that the whole idea of the sleaze, the fact that they're in so many scantily wearing tops would add sort of a sleazy charm to it. But I will tell you this, I'll give you the comparison of what really is sleazy charm. Think about Matthew McConaughey in The Lincoln Lawyer. The Lincoln Lawyer, biggest surprise of the year, you can quote me on that one. Matthew McConaughey's character in that film has an oily black, almost sleazy charm to him. Now you basically take that comparison to Sucker Punch's characters, and it doesn't even work. And then we get into Sucker Punch's biggest problem. Its story makes absolutely no sense. And I know this is science fiction, and I know it goes from one universe to the next, to the completely next. But there is no coherence of how this universe affects this universe, of how that universe affects this universe. I'm lost, I don't get it. This one has simple questions that demand answers. But even if certain scenes would work on their own, as sort of like a cutscene in a game, but overall this very ambitious film doesn't quite work. But for me coming out just saying it's a bad film, even though I thought it was going to be really awful, it's quite a compliment. So overall this ambitious film can be filed under ambitious failure. And now we move on to a film with great qualities and some great ideas. It's Source Code by Moon's Duncan Jones. All you really need to know about Source Code is that it stars Jake Gyllenhaal as Captain Colter Wade Stevens. He has 8 minutes to try and stop a bomb and prevent another attack from happening. If I say anything else, spoilers will be coming. As with Sucker Punch, didn't really read the reviews. I feel if you read reviews before you go see a film, it corrupts you majorly. However, with Source Code, this is Duncan Jones' second feature. My problem going into Source Code was exactly that. If you look at the past record of really good first features and then really bad second features for sci-fi directors in the same vein as Duncan Jones made a very independent film, very low on budget. He's able to do a lot with very little. That's what Richard Kelly for Donnie Darko did. Richard Kelly from Donnie Darko went on to make the pitiful Southland Tales. Then we had DJ Caruso. Made this year's I Am Number 4, couldn't be bothered with it. He made the really good hit. It wasn't his first film, but it was his first hit anyway. First one that people knew his name was Disturbia, with Shia LaBeouf. Then they did Eagle Eye together, which I will quote, one of the worst films of the last few years. But what Duncan Jones has made here is an incredibly solid, accessible, completely entertaining sci-fi thriller. And as Duncan Jones puts it, it's more of a thriller with some sci-fi put on top. What I like about Source Code primarily, it's very repetitive. It can get incredibly tedious. The writer Ben Ripley, who, I have to do it, made Species, straight to DVD movies, Ripley, Alien, Sigourney Weaver, had to do it. And it's as if we haven't really seen this story before every time you go in, because they make it so fresh. Every time you go in, there's a new clue, there's a new point to go to, there's a new scene to see. The other thing I really like about this film is its soundtrack. It's by Clint Mansell, who did the Moon soundtrack, which I think everyone by now loves, and I think everyone loves Clint Mansell. The other thing I really like about this film is its soundtrack. It's by Clint Mansell, who did the Moon soundtrack, which I think everyone by now loves, and I think everyone loves Clint Mansell. But the direct comparison to Hitchcock films and more movies from the 1970s, I can't go as far as Blade Runner, but around that era, Clint Mansell adds a soundtrack that makes this sort of twist and turn movie feel like we're revisiting a classic. It reminds me most recognisably of North by Northwest, in the scene where Cary Grant, yeah, it is Cary Grant, meets the irresistible Eve Kendall. And basically Source Code, when it's inside the Source Code, when it's inside the train, is essentially that scene drawn out to the max to hyperventilating levels. It gets really exciting. The thing about Source Code is it plays it incredibly straight, it also plays it incredibly seriously. But the thing about Source Code is it has the humour to balance that up. It goes back to sort of, even this is the strangest comparison to Source Code, is it goes back to the Kick-Ass reference, of where it's a film that's all humour, all wit, and all charm basically between the two leads. It's old-fashioned twists and turns. It's old-fashioned charm between two leads. And that's a good point and a bad point, because to a certain extent that's all the leads are really getting off with, being charming. And in actual fact that makes Source Code pretty much ahead of its game, because it doesn't have any identity crisis. Unlike Sucker Punch, which has really no humour and is essentially over the top, farcical and really serious, and then you've got movies like Inception, which are incredibly over the top. By the end of this film, with the two leads, Michelle Monaghan and Jake Gyllenhaal, it really rings a true heart-rendering romantic high. Those are some, it's bare bones thrills. It's straight and laced, and it's simple, yet it's kind of complex. I can't say it's thinking man cinema, but I can say that it's perfect popcorn cinema mixed in with a clever mix of game that has not been reinvented, but Source Code will do for just now.